All right. Um, so as you can tell by the title, this video is not really about Kansas City. Um, I'm kind of shocked. I am, but I'm not at the same time. If you watch my video on the picks, I picked the Chargers to win this game. I was convinced that they were different than the previous seasons. They weren't going to be the old Chargers. I was convinced. They went to Seattle. They beat a tough Seattle team. They came to Arrowhead. They won in a place they haven't won in 5 years. They were doing things that they haven't done in a long time. They had me convinced. They had me convinced. Do I think the Chargers are a bad football team now? No. No, I do not. I still think the Chargers are a good football team. I still think that they can compete. Um Did I see a lot of the Chargers' old ways tonight? Yes. Yes, I did. I watched the entire game. And yes, I do. I feel like I've seen a lot of their old ways tonight. Philip Rivers came out in the very first play, threw a pick. And after that, it was crying to the referees about every penalty that was committed, which that's another thing. I thought the penalties were pretty fair. There was a lot of pass interference calls. There was a lot of touching. There was a lot of straight arms, all kinds of stuff. It was pretty even. It was pretty anecdotal. There was holding calls both ways, and all of them were pretty fair. The Chargers shot themselves in the foot a lot tonight. It was kind of uncharacteristic, but they had a lot of penalties tonight. Um, I want to say, let's see, penalties. Yeah, the Chargers had 8 penalties tonight. That's a lot for them. Baltimore only had 4, and one of them was an unsportsmanlike conduct. The other one was a pass interference on the same guy. I thought was kind of strange because he really didn't need to touch the guy, and he really didn't need to hit him when he was out of bounds. But he did it anyways, and it was a fair call. Um, the Chargers got 8 penalties. That's crazy. That's like right underneath our numbers on penalties. That's really odd for them. So we're going to talk about multiple things in this video. Uh, there should have been another penalty called on Philip Rivers because he ripped his helmet off while he was on the field. He physically took it off. It wasn't ripped off. You can't do that. That is a 15-yard penalty. You cannot take your helmet off while you are on the field. Period. They didn't flag him for that. After Rivers threw that first interception, and after the first couple drives when he just couldn't generate anything, I mean, they didn't even get a first down until 5 minutes into the second quarter. And they were backed up on their own goal line. The old Philip Rivers came back out. It wasn't the diehard Philip Rivers, hey, let's get out here, let's get this win, let's push down the field, let's score a touchdown. No, it was the old crybaby Rivers. It was always up the referee's ass, always trying to talk to him, always trying to get in their face, always going to the opponent's sideline. The salty Philip Rivers. Oh, we're committing penalties. Okay, I'm going to come over here and annoy the shit out of you for 10 minutes straight. Just stuff like that. And you know what? In the past, I've never minded the Chargers, really. I've never really had a problem with them, but I've always hated Philip Rivers. I always hated him. People brag about his stats. Plain and simple, I think the only reason he has good stats like that is because he's been in the damn league for so long. I really do. He's had multiple coaches. He's went through some adversity. I'll give him that. But it's just like they looked like the old Chargers tonight. Pressure ate Philip Rivers alive. It frustrated him. And the second the Ravens got inside of his head, that game was over. And I'm going to say that game was over probably about halfway through the second quarter when he couldn't score anything. and the refs were calling holding penalties against him, which were fair penalties. He was getting thrashed around all night. He was getting hit constantly. I mean, like I said, that's the old Philip Rivers. You cause a turnover and you stop him a couple of times and you're right inside of his head. And personally, I think that's what really holds him back. I think if he wouldn't have such an attitude, if he, some people say, oh, he's got that die-hard will to win. No, that's not passion. Bitching to the referees about a call that was blatant is not passion. Crying to the referees, ripping your coach's head off, which, by the way, took this team from, being the bottom feeder of the AFC West to an 11-4 record. He's going to go rip his ass. If I was that coach, if I was Anthony Lynn, I would have ripped his ass out of the game. I don't care. If he's playing that bad and he's on the sideline ripping the coach's ass, get him the hell out. I would have rather play the backup than be an NFL coach and give the Chargers this kind of a record when they've been that bad over the past years with basically the same personnel. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of new guys, don't get me wrong. Keenan Allen's always been hurt. Williams was hurt, but now he's playing. Melvin Gordon's been there for the most part. But more than anything else, Antonio Gates and Philip Rivers. But there's a lot of new faces, so I'll give him that. But having that kind of record and a quarterback playing that bad, and then blaming it on everybody else but himself, and then going and ripping his coach's ass, no, I wouldn't have dealt with that. Nope. I could see why he would be frustrated because of his line. But I've seen a lot of plays tonight where he had ample amount of time to throw it. There just wasn't anybody to throw it to, or he missed them. I'm not sure what the case is, but if you take that long to throw it, it's your own fault, man. You didn't get rid of it. Lamar Jackson in the running game just ate this defense apart. I mean, just tore him up. Lamar Jackson ended up with better passing stats tonight than Philip Rivers. Let that sink in. I said this to people at work during the week, and they called me crazy for it. I said Baltimore is a great matchup for the Chargers. Because the Chargers get frustrated when you start getting in their line, which is what Baltimore does. When we played Baltimore and Kansas City, they pressured the dog shit out of Mahomes. I mean, they was on him all the time. They did an outstanding job corralling Patrick Mahomes and not letting him run anywhere. They get pressure, they get turnovers, and they score points off those turnovers. Look, let's just be brutally honest. I remember a shitload of times tonight where Baltimore should have scored more points than what they did. They was on the goal line. They could have got at least 3 out of that. Or you would imagine with the kicker they got. But they went for it on a 4th and goal and missed it. And Crabtree got called for that offensive pass interference, which was weird because it was an uncatchable ball anyway. So it's not like Crabtree was going to catch that to begin with. Which, by the way, he never really touched the corner anyways. I thought that was weird, but that was about the only weird call. They missed a field goal that he doesn't usually miss. And I'm not talking about the one before half. That was a 64-yarder. The only touchdown the Chargers scored was off of a turnover, a short field. They didn't even cross midfield until, gosh, I don't know. I think it was late first half, and it was because of those pass interference calls. It was because 23 committed a pass interference. He didn't even need to touch the guy, but he did it anyways. He did. He committed pass interference. So that moved him up, and then the same guy on that next play They corralled a guy for like a 1 yard gain, and he was like 2 yards out of bounds, and the kid came through and hit him, which was unneeded. I'm going to be brutally honest. This game should have been somewhere around, I don't know, probably 31 to 3 or something like that. It should have been an absolute blowout. This is how you beat the Chargers. This is how you beat the Chargers. You put pressure on Phillip Rivers. You sack him. You start getting inside of his head. How do I know this? Kansas City's done this for years to Phillip Rivers. All those years we had a great defense, pressured him, sacked him, hit him. What would he start doing? He'd start complaining, whining, griping, bitching at the coaches. I get griping at your players because you're trying to get them to bust their ass a little bit more. But you know what? When you make what's a good example? Like I think it was like 3 years ago, right? We were playing in Arrowhead, and Phillip Rivers threw like 4 picks, and they were all on the other side of the field, and the Chargers lost. And he blamed all that shit on everybody else. And he had ample amount of time to throw. He just made the wrong decisions. And I'm not saying that Phillip Rivers is bad. I'm just saying that look, a leader takes responsibility for the loss even if it's not his fault. He completely shoulders that. Tom Brady. Tom Brady's a good example. He will shoulder that loss even if it's not his fault. Phillip Rivers is the complete opposite. He won't shoulder shit. He'll sit there and he'll say, well, the line didn't block. Our run game wasn't very good. He won't say anything about not being able to pass it worth a shit, though. So let's take a look at what the analyst said, okay? So there's not much video on this yet. Colin Cowherd hadn't said anything, or Shannon Sharpe, or any of them. Actually, they kind of did. Before the game, everybody picked the Chargers. Everybody and their mom knows leading up to this game, the Chargers were high favorites. The whole Super Bowl contention thing came back. And you know what? The Chargers let it go to their head. The analysts said they were Super Bowl favorites. They beat Kansas City, which was ranked number 1. They thought they had it all made. We're going to get this first seed, and we're going to go to the Super Bowl because the analyst says we are. They let it go to their head. Baltimore was fighting for a spot tonight. They had to win. They had to win to stay in. And if Pittsburgh loses tomorrow, guess what? Baltimore's not playing New England anymore. They're gonna be playing in Pittsburgh seed, which will be the Chargers again. Which, guess what, is really bad news for the Chargers. Really bad news. Because I guarantee you these guys are going to throttle you twice as hard next time. And by the way, if Baltimore's got that 4th seed and they're the division winner, guess where the Chargers are going? To Baltimore. And half of Baltimore was in Los Angeles tonight. So anyways, back to the analyst. Everybody picked the Chargers. I mean, it was clear. Even I picked the Chargers during this week. I thought they would win. I thought they would at least play better than what they did. Baltimore just totally shut them down. And the analysts after the game said that they were absolutely shocked. Now, I don't see how you're shocked though, because, like I said, Baltimore is like the perfect match for these guys. They got a pressure defense. They got. Last I checked, they were the number 1 defense in the NFL. It might be the Bears now, but they were the number 1 defense in the NFL when Kansas City played them. So I'm gonna say that they're at least in the top 3. I mean, these guys did everything that Phillip Rivers hates, and that's pressure. Phillip Rivers is great when you give him all day. I mean, he is magnificent. You give him all day, he could probably beat Tom Brady, especially this year. But you pressure him, and he starts to turn into a Nathan Peterman, except he just blames everybody else for his problems, and he starts crying to the refs and crying to his head coach and complaining to him and ripping his ass. And that's not compassion to me. That's just well, I'm getting beat. It's not fair, and all that good jazz. And that's one of the reasons why I never did really like him. So moving past that, what did the analysts do? They went straight from being on the Chargers bandwagon to now jumping on the Ravens band. Now they're saying the Ravens are Super Bowl favorites. They're doing this. They're doing that. Look, the Ravens scheme worked really good against the Chargers. The Chargers had a weak run defense that's been known all year. Even though their defense is solid, the running game is their weak point. The Ravens had a stellar run game. If the Ravens play with the lead, I think they've won the last 4 out of 5 or something like that. So, Lamar Jackson has the lead. He usually wins. Well, that's what happened tonight. So you got the defense that Phillip Rivers hates. You got the run game that the defense hates. And it's completely overpowered. You got a 6'1" quarterback that runs like lightning. And you got 2 no-name running backs that run their ass off. Which, by the way, one of them had his first carry for a loss all season tonight. That's how dominant their run game is. So it was everything that the Chargers hate and everything that the Chargers oppose. I mean, it was the perfect team to spoil them. And they were playing for a playoff spot and their division, so they had everything riding on tonight. The Ravens were everything that the Chargers hated and everything the Chargers didn't want to play against. And the Chargers let all that media and stuff just run to their head. That's my opinion. Look, Baltimore's got a good scheme. And they had a really good scheme against the Chargers. Because, as I said, they had strong points where the Chargers didn't. Lamar Jackson threw the ball better than I thought he would tonight. And he threw it more than what I thought he would tonight. He usually never throws it. But he was effective. Never really got pressured. But you go up against teams like Kansas City, that's a bend-don't-break defense, but they score touchdowns on offense. You get beat. You play a team like a Pittsburgh or New England, somebody that has a bend-don't-break defense, but they score points. These are teams that will beat Baltimore because they will get in the end zone when Baltimore simply gets field goals. Because they get to a point where they're one-dimensional and they just run and run and run. And they weren't one-dimensional tonight. They actually threw the ball. Maybe that will rise, but he's a rookie. They're going to run until they can't do it anymore. And once teams figure out that that's one-dimensional, and they got a one-dimensional football team, they'll attack it. The only thing that's going to save them is that defense. I'm not saying Lamar Jackson is bad. I'm definitely saying that I'm disappointed in the Chargers. As a Kansas City fan, I thought they would play better than that. I remember one time Baltimore had like a 3rd and 12 on the other side of the field, and they ran that son of a bitch. And they got it. They were just the perfect match for the Chargers. And if you're the Chargers, you definitely don't want to see them in the playoffs. And as of right now, especially if Pittsburgh loses tomorrow against the Saints, you got them again. But they're in Baltimore this time, and that's the first round of the playoffs. So the Chargers went from Super Bowl favorites, now the Ravens being the Super Bowl favorites. I like the Ravens. I don't think they're winning the Super Bowl. John Harbaugh, is it John or Jim? I think it's John. He's dangerous in the playoffs. He always has been. But you got a rookie quarterback. He does struggle with the pass, especially in long distance. You got a bunch of teams in the playoffs that can put up a shitload of points on any given Sunday. I mean, if you take field goals and the other team scoring touchdowns, Kansas City's kind of proof of that. But wait, there's more. I heard LaDainian Tomlinson say, man, they should have beat Kansas City. They were lucky not. Kansas City was just lucky that they beat them. Look, man, I don't really. Maybe you're just high up on the Baltimore bandwagon now that they beat the Chargers. Or, you're trying to justify picking the wrong team. But guess what? I picked the wrong team, too. I thought the Chargers were going to win. Even though I said it. I'll root for the Ravens, but I'm definitely picking the Chargers. And it happened. They got beat. And now he's saying they're lucky to win in Kansas City. What part of that game was lucky? What part was lucky? Defense came up strong at the end of the game. Pat Mahomes fumbled it. They didn't get on it in overtime. We put them in a long yardage situation where they was forced to pass it, which they couldn't do near the end of the game. They had a lead for some time on the game. They had the fourth quarter pressure. They had one long fourth down and a 4th and goal, and we converted both of those. Harrison Butker missed a game-winning field goal. I mean, what more? How is Kansas City lucky in that situation? I guess you could kind of say we're lucky that we won because we made so many stupid mistakes that Baltimore never capitalized on. But that's the thing. We made mistakes and Baltimore refused to capitalize on them. So there you go. I guess you could technically say, oh, yeah, they're lucky they didn't beat Kansas City. Whatever, you know. But I've seen this happen. Being a Kansas City fan, I've seen this happen so many times. You have a great defense. You have a tremendous run game. But that's all you got. And when a team makes you one-dimensional, it puts so much pressure on that great defense that eventually they snap. And I think that's kind of what happened to the Chargers tonight. You know, Phillip Rivers couldn't do shit. And you know, the Chargers kept holding them off on 3 points, kept holding them off. Bend, don't break. And guess what? It finally gave out. The same thing will happen to Baltimore. And Phillip Rivers can actually pass the ball. You know, I'm not saying Lamar Jackson can't. This is just the only game where he was efficient doing it. And it was a good game to do it, too, because they needed it. So, anybody that's wondering, Lamar Jackson was 12 out of 22, which is a good night for him. 204 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks. Phillip Rivers was 23 for 37, 181, and 2 INTs. He had a rough night, and he got outplayed by Lamar Jackson, and a lot of it goes to Lamar's defense. Gordon was pretty much shut down all night. He had 12 carries for only 41 yards, a touchdown. He only averaged 3.4 yards a carry. I mean, they really just totally shut everybody down. And the really big knife to it was Antonio Gates fumbling that ball and then running it back for a touchdown, even though Baltimore should have scored 14 points earlier in the game, but they didn't. 7 of which never hit the scoreboard because they failed to convert on that 4th down. So, what does this mean now? Well, Kansas City's got to play Seattle technically tonight, the Sunday night game. It's supposed to be a monsoon. It's supposed to be a downpour of rain. Look, Seattle's running a defensive scheme. I read something that Patrick Mahomes has 11 touchdowns, 0 interceptions against those schemes. This game is going to prove what Kansas City really is. This game is going to prove what Kansas City really is. Are they going to be that team that barely gets by? Are they going to be that team that, and I'm not saying Seattle's bad. Are they going to be that team that, you know, finds a way to win at the end? Or are they going to be that team that falters? Kansas City's got everything in their favor right now. Everything. They've got everything where they want it. New England's forced to be in a wild card right now. As long as Houston wins, that's what they wanted. Kansas City's got the 1st seed and the AFC West locked up tomorrow if they win. Seattle's fighting for a playoff spot. Look, Seattle has a 99% chance of making the playoffs if they beat Kansas City. If they lose to Kansas City, it is the complete opposite. They have a 99% chance of not making the playoffs. So that's that. I mean, it's a game just like this. So what are we gonna get? Are we gonna get a Patrick Mahomes that goes off and wins by 10 points? Or are we gonna get a team where Eric Berry plays for a half, and then they take him out, and everybody's lost again. Kendall Fuller will not be playing this game. I'm pretty sure they said he was questionable, but I highly doubt he plays. Which means I heard they are going to take the safety, Jordan Lucas, and put him at corner. I like this. I like this a lot. Why? Kendall Fuller is our most physical corner, right? Jordan Lucas isn't very big, but God is he physical. And it would be great if we still had Armani Watts right now, because Armani Watts plays aggressive as shit. Small guy, real small guy, really aggressive. I loved watching him play earlier in the season before he got hurt. But Jordan Lucas is going to, from what I hear, is going to step up and take that corner position, so we'll see how that goes. But this is, Kansas City's got a golden opportunity. If they screw this up, I'm gonna be completely and brutally honest, like I always am. If Kansas City loses this game, I get it. Seattle plays great at home. Seattle's a tough team. They're well coached. I understand that. If Kansas City loses this game, I don't think they deserve to be in the playoffs at all, even though they got a spot clinched up, let alone the first seed if they do end up winning the first seed, even if they lose. That's just my brutally honest opinion. If they can't beat this team, they don't need to be in the playoffs. So here's the gist. Before I end this, my videos just keep getting longer and longer, which is fine by me. Maybe not for some people, but it's fine by me. If Kansas City wins this game, it's done. They win the AFC West. They lock up the first seed. The Texans can tie us, but there's not much that they can do with it. We own the tiebreaker. I think it's because of conference record or something like that. Found that out last night. If they lose this game, they're going to have to beat the Raiders, period. That's it. If they lose to the Raiders, then you got to expect the Chargers to lose to the Broncos. And I'm tired of expecting teams to lose. They already blew one opportunity. They better not blow this one. This is a golden opportunity. They've got everything to lose, and they've got one thing to gain. They've got everything where they want it. They've got all their cards where they want them. I mean, all they've got to do is lay it down and do what Kansas City does. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens, you know. The Chargers had a pretty big lead on Seattle earlier this season, and Seattle came back and made it a game. So, you can't sleep on them either. So, we'll see where it goes. You'll hear from me tomorrow.